Listen to the Vibes.
Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Listen to the Vibes. I'm very happy to welcome Kirsten Rudberg here. And she
Yay.
is author, a podcaster, a screenwriter, a producer, and you have a Master of Divinity?
Yes, I went to seminary. I went to Iliff School of Theology in Denver, Colorado.
Oh.
So yeah. I have no explanation for that other than I felt that it was just part of my life path, that I was supposed to get it. You know, I've been interested in fables and myths and stories from all over the world. And for some reason, you know, getting a Master's of Divinity just seemed like the right way to go for me. So yeah, I'm no specific religion. I'm a panentheist, which means that I see spirit or God in everything. Including this interview or your headphones or your t-shirt. But yeah, I'm not any prescribed religion.
Okay. I actually used to preach myself. I was a preacher for about 5 years. I walked away from it, but back on a spiritual path again and really feel like I'm getting closer to God every day. And speaking of, there was a topic that I wanted to touch on, which was signs of the universe. Do you believe that we do get signs, and how do you see signs? Like, is it like we discussed before we started? I see angel numbers and things like that.
Yeah, well, that's an interesting topic and one that's really close to my heart because I do think, you know, every individual is different. And so that universal energy, that spirit, it'll have different ways of communicating with different people just because based on what your need is. And I'm all this to say that I've had, you know, I could tell you a story about signs that happened to me to walk the Camino de Santiago. But at other times, I know that this God or this universal spirit looks at me and says that one is kind of a jerk and needs more clear promptings because, you know, otherwise she's going to like collapse in a worry bubble. And so I've also had people literally come up to me and say, I'm supposed to tell you this, and this is something you should know. So I get both kinds of signs. I think partially because I'm stubborn and I whine a lot. There's a lot of whining. So for the Camino, for example, this is a quick story. I wasn't interested in it. I didn't even know about it. And I went to a feast day in Portland, Oregon at this monastery. And the woman sitting next to me was the carbon copy of a friend who had just died the year before. From her hair to her jewelry, it was striking. And afterwards, we met and talked. And she said, "Oh, I'm a pastor. I'm going to walk the Camino next year." And I thought, "What's that? I've never heard of this." So at Christmas, my partner at the time, he got me some books on the Camino, and it's basically a different pilgrimage routes, Catholic, okay, and I'm not Catholic, through Switzerland, Italy, Spain, France to get to Santiago. And for thousands of years, pilgrims have walked this path to testify to God that they're faithful. And so I was like, oh, that's really interesting and it sounds fun. I would never do it. I'm not Catholic. And, you know, a few months later, a friend sent me this movie and said, "I just thought of you. You should watch this. It's really interesting." And I get it in the mail, and it's this movie called The Way. And it's basically a story, a fictional story of these pilgrims that walk the Camino. And I thought, oh, that's weird that she would think of me for this. And then I went to my acupuncturist, and he was working on me, and he said, "Oh, my mother walked the Camino. She actually broke her ankle after 500 miles." And I was like, that's random and weird and okay, whatever. And then a few months later, a dear friend who lived at the Oregon coast was telling me about how this is the strangest one. She was cleaning out her mother's study from decades of just papers. And her mom had been moved into an Alzheimer's unit. And she said, "I found this pamphlet for this walk from like the 60s." And she said, "I felt compelled to send it to you." So I opened the envelope, and it's a walk for the Camino, a travel guide from the 1960s. And I thought, what is happening? And so whenever I have those moments, I go to my tarot deck and I pull a tarot card, and the card was, "You're not listening to the messages you're getting." And I thought, oh my gosh, are you joking? You want me to walk the Camino? I would never do this. I don't backpack. I don't speak, I mean, I speak a little Spanish. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm not Catholic. Are you joking right now? Like I'd have to leave and go for like 3 months because I want to do it intentionally. I have to quit my job. I have to find someone to rent my house. This is like a joke. And it was like, no, this is what you're supposed to do. And I started talking to people, and within a few weeks, I had someone to rent my house to take care of my animals. Everything was facilitated, and I got over there and did it. And so, I get these little dribbles sometimes of like signs over and over. Like I always call them like wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Like, hey, pay attention. Like there's something that needs to be done here. Or, you know, like I was living in Santa Fe and I had to move home briefly. I mean, not briefly, it's been months now, to take care of my mother. She's been having a lot of health issues. And I came home and I really felt like girl interrupted. I mean, I quit my job, I left my home, I left all my friends. And I was preaching at this Methodist church the week before I was supposed to leave. And this gentleman came up to me, and the kindest, most loving eyes. He just looked amazing. And he said, I'm so glad you're here, because the first time you gave a sermon, I didn't tell you this. And I went home that night and the Holy Spirit was mad at me and said, why didn't you tell her? And was poking me. And so now here you are, and I have to tell you something. And it started off with, you may think that your life's going in the wrong direction, but this is exactly the plan for you. And this is where you're supposed to be going. And so please don't be afraid of moving home to take care of your mother. And then the rest of it was private. But I mean, that's happened to me 3 or 4 times where complete strangers have come up to me and said, I have a message. I am supposed to tell you this. It never feels bad. It never feels like there's pressure. It's just things that I am supposed to know that will be helpful to me. And so, I don't know if it's because I'm stubborn or a jerk or whatever, but somehow I do feel like I'm being led. I do believe in signs just because they happen to me all the time, all around me. And I think, for other people, those signs can be anything from, this, it could be something, an actor's name that you hear 3 times in 24 hours in different places. For me, that's always a sign that there is a level of synchronicity building and something's going to happen and I need to notice it. So it's kind of like the universe kind of poking me and saying, hey, pay attention. Things are going to be happening that you need to witness or understand. Or it could be, I don't know, on a walk, seeing the same kind of dog over the course of several days, or meeting someone 3 times in 3 different places in a city. It's always, to me, synchronicity, like something's building, you need to pay attention in the next 24 to 48 hours because something's going to happen that you need to pay attention to.
I don't want to make this about me, but I have a story to tell you. We moved up here to the Austin area about 6 years ago. And mind you, I lived outside of Houston all my life. And when I got married, we'd come up and we'd visit and with my wife's family and friends. And I fell in love with it. So I retired from my job and we moved up here. And I feel like this is where I'm supposed to be. Well, the last few times that we visited back home, it was because my mother had gotten sick and went in the hospital. My wife's mother and father are not doing too well. In fact, her father has Alzheimer's. And so we had talked about maybe we need to move back. I mean, my kids still live down there. My grandkids are there. But I felt depressed that I didn't want to leave. And I didn't know what should we do. And we seriously started talking about it. And I said, all right, well, I'm going to do what God wants me to do. So I'm like, God, if you want us to go, then I'll do it. I just need to know this is the right move. My wife, she needs a job, and I'm on disability. I can't work. But anyway, she needs a job. You're going to have to do this for us. I kid you not, within days, my wife got a call from the dean of the University of Houston, and now she is going to be her executive assistant. It's more money. I mean, the benefits stay the same because it's a state entity. She works for the state. All of her benefits, retirement, everything goes with her. So we're going to move into my mom's place. And things are going to be really good for us, although I still feel depressed about leaving here. But things like that happen, and you think, God must really be talking to me. The universe has given me signs. This is supposed to happen. I'm with you. Something random will repeat itself at least 3 times in a day. Or I'll say, if this is supposed to happen, or if you have a message, let me see such and such number on a license plate. The next car that comes by, those numbers are on that license plate. Things like that.
Yeah.
I mean, am I crazy? Is this really happening? That's why I want to discuss it.
Yeah. Well, I think, what's interesting, you have to know about me. I grew up overseas and I've traveled all over the world. And, so I've met lots of different people. I've seen lots of different ways of worship. But growing up, I loved science and I couldn't get enough of science magazines. I still love science. All that to say that even talking about this maybe 10 years ago would have made me want to go throw up in the corner because I thought none of this is all real, and anybody who this isn't real, anybody who talks about it is ridiculous, and they need to, like, I don't know, go jump off a cliff. And then all these things started happening in my life that I, it was just these gentle introductions over and over. Hey, there are things, for example, I went to 3 different psychics, and all of them said, "Oh, you're supposed to be a writer. Oh, you're supposed to be a writer." And at the time, I had no money. I was barely hanging on. I mean, and writing for me, it was like on a computer. I was so desperate. And so one day, because I'm so stubborn and, kind of a grumpy little jerk, I went into the bedroom and I was like, "All right, if you want me a writer, you get me a computer. You get me a computer. I think you're a jerk because you want me to write and I don't have a computer and whatever. You suck. You suck." I was like done. I was like, "All right, if you think you're so fancy and cool, give me a computer and let's see." And I like dropped it, done and dusted, walked out of the room, and I'm like, "I told you." And so then 3 months later, my brother calls me and says, okay, and this was not a laptop. This was a very, very heavy computer. My brother calls me, okay, and keep in mind, we don't talk very much at that point. And he just said, I feel compelled. I'm going to mail you my desktop from Chicago to Portland. He said, I just feel like I'm supposed to mail my computer to you. And I was like, what are you talking? So it comes in this giant box. It's so huge because this was a long time ago. It was so big. And I thought, oh dear, now I have to like put up or shut up. But not only that, I have to kind of, despite my best efforts, resisting it, like admit that something's going on here that my analytical scientific mind cannot rationalize.
Mm-hmm.
And I need to kind of maybe not be such a doubter, a little doubting Thomas, and understand that there are things that want to co-create with me and are like, hey, this one over here is really stubborn. It's kind of a jerk, but we're gonna like gently introduce her to the idea that magic and like miracles are happening, and you just have to start a relationship, and we'll be patient with her, and it'll happen. So I tell people it's like I haven't been given a choice, because part of me feels like I haven't. I mean, I always say laughingly, but it's not funny, that if I don't engage or listen or respond, I'll get cancer. I mean, there's just this knowing in me that if I don't step up to the plate, that I don't do the work that I'm sent here to do, which who knows what that is, but being kind is one of them, listening to other people, being present for people. If I don't do the work, I'm going to get sick. I have such a profound knowing around that and I think all of us are called to something, some way to help people or be present to them or whatever it is. It could be the smallest act of kindness. But I'm not so stubborn. Now I'm willing to listen, which is a miracle in itself.
I feel bad because what I'm doing, it is for my mom. I mean, she's my mother. I've got to take care of her. And I feel bad because I'm gonna really miss this place and I've resisted wanting to go. And it's something I need to do. You know, I should feel good for the fact that I can go do something like that I am here for her. But I feel mad at myself for that resistant feeling of I don't want to leave and I can't be selfish.
Yeah. Well, what's really interesting is, I mean, I don't know if it's the time of my life or what's going on, but I keep everywhere I turn, there are dear friends and acquaintances that are having to be present for their parents. And whether that looks like moving close, like a block or two away, or even in the same town, or if it's moving in with them, you're being more intentional about it. You're being really thoughtful and intentional. Mine was just get out of Santa Fe, move here. 2 weeks later, my stepfather died, which wasn't even part of any equation that anyone had planned. But I'm still here, and what is it, 5 months later? Almost 5 months later. And by the way, my mother's had accident after accident, flu, COVID. She's just been, I mean, broken bones. It has been so challenging and so hard. And I get it. I get it when the heart loves a place because part of our identity is found where we live. We define ourselves
Mhm.
by maybe the local library or maybe a restaurant or a bar or a friend's house or a backyard. Like our lives and who we are, we use where we live to define who we are, and our hearts, they become attached, deeply to the land, to the ground, to our communities. And so uh, this move could potentially only be temporary for you. I hope that it is, because I do sense that your heart is really tethered to where you are.
Yes.
And yeah, I mean, maybe you can have a conversation with the land and say, I'm going to be back. I'm going to be back. And make it a contract, like some sort of soul contract. Because it is not fun saying goodbye to people that you love and to houses and to homes. And it's really sad. So I applaud you for being there for your mom, but I don't envy your journey. It's gonna be tough.
Yeah. And I know God's listening because when I have problems and I say, God, I need the answer, usually I'll have a guest that'll come on and they will address that problem and I get the answer right then and there. So yeah, God listens if you're willing to listen to him.
Yeah, and I think it's also, for your listeners, it's, as much as like my 10 years ago me would be like, this is so gross. Um, I mean, I'm at this point where it's like, why isn't everybody talking to spirits, to angels, to, even if you just want to say energies, because they're all kind of waiting there for us to start a conversation.
Mhm.
And, some are more patient than others, but I always say to people, like, this universe is in it for us to win it. And they're all waiting. They're like, hello, yes, eternity is a long time, but not for us. But we have been waiting for you because we have things we want you to make this world a more beautiful place. You know, they're waiting for us. We just need to start the conversation and open ourselves up to it.
Well, I'm gonna go on to the next topic, which I
Excellent.
understand you have an animated series on YouTube.
Yes. It's I love playing around with really fun ideas, and it's called Murder of Two, and it's about two crows that sit on a line and they talk about humanity. They observe humanity. It can be really funny. It can be ridiculous. Each episode is like 2 to 3 minutes long, very short. I like writing really short things that kind of get the point across. It's not serious, but of course, as with all things, as I was writing it and then producing it, I was like, oh my gosh, what's my unconscious doing here? I'm basically, the crows are God. They're observing humanity. God's observing humanity and looking at all the mistakes we make, the silly things we do, the messes we get ourselves in, and thinking, oh dear.
And you have a podcast, or you're starting a
Yes.
podcast?
Yeah. I'm on episode 162 this week. Woo!
Okay.
And it's called Bite-Sized Blessings. And basically, I interview everybody under the sun, every religion. I just interviewed someone from Trinidad yesterday, all over the world. And I basically look for people. The main thrust is, have you ever witnessed something you consider to be a miracle or magical, or however you define that? And how did it change your life? And I've had stories of ghosts. I've had stories of visions. People have talked about their mothers and how important they were. People who have died and what they saw on the other side. Nothing's off the table. I never tell anyone what to say. I just say, please tell me something that changed your life. And it's people say, oh my God, it's so amazing. You're doing this for everyone. You're so wonderful. And I'm like, no, it's totally selfish, because I want to hear the stories. I'm a terrible person. I want to hear these stories to remind myself that there's like so much goodness and magic in the world, because I need it. I need to hear those stories. So yes, it is. I do put this podcast out, Bite-Sized Blessings, and it's BYTE, but it's totally a selfish endeavor. End of story.
What's the craziest story you've heard so far?
Ooh, on the podcast, I assume, is what you're talking about. Okay, so gosh, that's a good one. Well, I think the craziest story was when I interviewed Ethan Hope. And he is a physical therapist in Santa Fe, New Mexico. But he went down to Peru and studied with the Shipibo people for 3 months. And they are a people that they're a shamanic, I guess you'd say pre-industrialized society, still living in the jungle there. But they take plant medicines, and they've taken them for thousands of years. And their specific plant medicine is ayahuasca. And so he went down there. But he was studying with them, and they really communicate through song. So they have so many different songs, and they sing different songs to different plants and what have you. And so the tree at the center of their kind of religious belief system is the Noya Rao tree. And there are 2 or 3 of them, I think, in Peru. So one night, well, this happened multiple times, he said. They all trekked 2 or 3 hours out into the middle of the jungle to visit the Noya Rao tree, which is believed to be a tree from another planet, or a bridge tree to other realities and other dimensions. Sentient being, highly intelligent. And they would just sit there and sing songs to the tree for hours. And he said multiple times, they'd turn their flashlights off. They're in complete darkness in the jungle. Multiple times at the exact same moment, in the same song, all the leaves that had died and were on the forest floor would bioluminesce at the same time. And so these leaves that, you assume are dead, they would come alive and glow with light at the same time, in the middle of the night, at the same point, in the same song. And every time I hear that story, people are like, what? And I thought, no, this is what's happening in the world all around us. We're just not paying attention. So that's probably one of the more beautiful stories I've ever heard. And it reminds me that there's so much beauty that we're missing in this world, even in other people. And we need to pay more attention.
There's so many people that have great stories. They just want to be heard. And that's why I like podcasting, because otherwise somebody might never hear the stories. And it could change your life. Seriously.
Just like I was saying, like even the smallest act can change someone's day. You never know. Sometimes I'm making the podcast and I'm like, I don't even know why I'm doing this. I literally have no idea why I'm having this conversation. It's so much work. I'm exhausted this week, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And every time I'm complaining and feeling sorry for myself, because I do, someone within 24 hours will message me, text me, email me, and say, this podcast is so beautiful and it changed my life. So, one day I was driving to work in Santa Fe and I was griping and grousing and complaining and feeling sorry for myself. Total pity party in the car, whining with capital W, whining and just saying, I can't believe I do this. This is so stupid. This podcast is exhausting. I mean, because I have bad days. And then then I think to myself and I'm like, all right, jerk universe. All right, jerk spirits, whatever, angels. Just because I'm whining, within 24 hours, you're going to send me some message from some person that's going to say how much I love your podcast, whatever. I don't care. And then I got to work and I was like at work 3 or 4 hours. My dear friend Steve sent me a text and said, my God, the podcast this week totally changed how I think about whatever, whatever, whatever. And I was like, maybe I'm the jerk. Sorry, universe. I'm the jerk. Whoop, right here, jerk. The universe should be wearing a t-shirt and it would be like, I'm with jerk. And I'll be standing next to it. That's me. I own it. I own it.
The ultimate goal of my podcast is to try to help other people. But the selfish part of it is I get to meet so many wonderful people that change my life and impact me and encourages me to keep going. Because there are days I've like, why am I doing this? Nobody's watching, nobody's listening. But it's not about the numbers. It's about you're affecting somebody's life out there. And it may only be one person, but maybe that's what this has led up to. Maybe it's why I'm supposed to do what I'm doing.
Absolutely. And, the other thing I think is, COVID obviously shut down the world.
Yeah.
But, and a lot of us, we had to go to Zoom, right? For everything, office meetings, PTA meetings, whatever, what have you. And I really do love and appreciate the explosion in podcasts and the fact that so many people are meeting over Zoom, because I could certainly have this conversation with you over the phone. Wait, phones still exist, right? Yes. Or I could just, however we do it. But I get to see your face. I get to see you eye to eye. And what we need more connection. We need more strangers meeting each other. We need more people having conversations, meeting each other. I mean, that's why partially I do the podcast is I'm bringing every kind of human being that you can even imagine. And so many of my listeners are pretty religious. And they've said to me, I would never meet this person in my daily life, but you're bringing so much humanity to them. And now I understand that, not that they were dehumanizing them, but there might have been a little dehumanization going on. They're like, oh my gosh, they're just like me. I mean, that's the intention behind the podcast. And I suspect your show, right? For us to like meet and see other people and understand, my gosh, we're all wrestling with the same things. We're all just trying to get through the day. At this point, we're trying to survive. There's so much sorrow in the world and suffering, but by God, there's a lot of people doing beautiful stuff. And we need to remind ourselves of that over and over and over again. It's so important.
Well, the great thing is when you meet people, they're not on social media, they're not the trolls and, the people that just make it sound like we're all crazy. You meet someone and you find out it doesn't matter what your politics are, doesn't matter what church you go to. We have more in common than what the media and social media will have you believe.
Yeah, and you know, when I was in seminary, I took this course and they've done a lot of scientific research around, you know, compassion and altruism and empathy.
Hmm.
And the majority of human beings all over the planet, like they will run into that burning building to save someone.
Yes.
They will band together to lift a car off someone. They will band together to buy groceries for a family that's struggling. I mean, it's the numbers bear it out. And so this kind of idea in the media out there in the world that 50% of people hate 50% of the other people, it's not true. At the end of the day, when we're faced with something dire or terrible, we will step up to help each other, no matter what we look like, what religion we practice, how people operate in the world. We're either programmed or we desire to be of service to other people.
Exactly.
Thank
So,
goodness.
right. So what is your website?
Oh, it's bitesizedblessings.com and it's BYTE sizedblessings.com. And that's because every episode has either the main interview or you can just listen to the little bite-sized episode, which just contains the little nugget of the miracle or the magical thing. So yeah.
And what about your social media?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm Bite-Sized Blessings Pod on TikTok. I'm sorry, no, on Instagram. I was thinking of my TikTok because I don't know if I can say this on your website, but I'm called the Bitch Slap Preacher on TikTok because, you know, I feel like I'm rapidly reaching my point where I can't take the nonsense that's going on in the world. And I don't know what it's going to look like because I don't have anything on TikTok, but I'm like getting it ready. And then on Facebook, it's Bite-Sized Blessings. And then on YouTube, it's Bite-Sized Blessings. Yeah. So, yeah, you know, I'm not big on social media because I do find it to be challenging
Yeah,
to quote
myself.
unquote sell myself because I don't like that. I don't like that idea, but I also think maybe I'm helping someone at some point. So maybe it's good. So, yeah.
How often do you put out your podcast?
Oh gosh, sometimes twice a week.
Okay.
But always one on the weekend, every single weekend. So yeah, it's a labor of love. Sometimes it's a labor of whining. Maybe it's a labor of whiny love. I don't know. But I do love doing it.
Well, I will put all the links in the description so it make it easy for folks to find you. But Kirsten, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Oh gosh, are you kidding? This was so fun. And now I know you, and now I'm excited.
Thank you. And I also want to thank all you folks out there. If you are new to the channel, I hope you'll come back. Please hit that subscribe button for my regulars. You guys are awesome because you make it possible for me to do this. And until the next one, everyone, please take care. Be kind to one another. God bless and peace.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of Listen to the Vibes. You can catch us on Buzzsprout or wherever you listen to your favourite podcasts. And on YouTube. Follow us on Facebook at The Vibes Broadcast Network